Today we're going to take a look at some of the strangest facts about the Spartans. The Spartans were an ancient Greek civilization located in the Peloponnese on the southern part of Greece. They are perhaps best known for their military prowess, as well as their strict way of life. But did you know that they also had some strange practices? From the food they ate to the way they treated their slaves. There are plenty of interesting things about Spartan culture that most people don't know. So without further ado, here are some of the weirdest facts about the Spartans. Number 1. Baby killing. Spartan society was extremely competitive and the survival of the fittest was evident from birth. When a baby was born, it would be placed in a basket and left outside for 3 days. If anyone, including family members, wanted to take the baby in and raise it, they could. This may seem odd to us today, but it was actually a way to ensure that only the strongest and most deserving babies would survive. It was also a form of population control, since Sparta was often at war and needed to keep its population down. Many historians believe that this practice is where the phrase survival of the fittest originated. Number 2. In addition to being fierce warriors themselves, the Spartans also kept a large population of slaves called helots, who did all the work for them. The helots outnumbered the Spartans by 7 to 1 and were considered property. They were forced to grow food, care for animals, and do other menial tasks, so that the Spartans could focus on training and fighting. The Spartans believed that the helots were inferior and didn't deserve any rights or freedoms. They were also forbidden from learning how to read or write, and they were not allowed to own any property. The Spartans used the helots as a source of cheap labor, and they also used them as a way to keep their own population down. By keeping the helots enslaved, the Spartans were able to avoid having to share any of their power or wealth with them. They also used the helots as a way to keep their population down. Number 3. Mutilation. The Spartans were known for their incredible endurance and strength, but they also had some strange habits. When it came to mutilating their body, for example, they believed that making holes in the ears could improve hearing, so they would make small holes in the earlobes of infants. They also believed that removing body hair could make a person stronger, so they would shave off all the hair on their bodies, including their eyebrows and eyelashes. And finally, they believed that stretching out the neck could make a person taller, so they would wear special collars around their necks that would stretch them out over time. Some scholars believe that these practices were part of a larger effort by the Spartans to make their bodies more efficient killing machines. By altering their bodies in this way, they were able to make themselves stronger, faster, and more enduring. Others believe that these practices were simply a way for the Spartans to distinguish themselves from other Greeks. After all, they were known for their unique lifestyle, and their strange habits were just another way to set themselves apart. Number 4. Alcohol. The Spartans were known for their love of wine, and their celebrations could get pretty wild. During festivals like Hyacinthian Carnia, the Spartans would drink heavily and engage in all kinds of revelry. They also had a special drink called kykeon, which was made from flour, herbs, and vinegar and was served during the Olympic Games. The Spartans believed that alcohol could help them relax and let loose after years of hard training and discipline. However, they also had some strange rules when it came to drinking. For example, they were only allowed to drink from a special cup called a fiali, which had 3 spouts. This was to symbolize the 3 parts of the soul: the mind, the spirit, and the body. They were also forbidden from getting drunk, and any Spartan who got drunk was fined or even put to death. Number 5. Marriage. Spartan marriages were a lot different than the marriages we see today. In fact, they were more like business arrangements and romantic partnerships. When a Spartan man reached the age of 30, he was expected to marry and produce children. However, the choice of partner was not up to him. Instead, his mother would select a bride for him, usually from a noble family. This was done in order to keep the bloodlines pure and to maintain the dominance of the ruling class. Once the marriage was arranged, the couple would live separately until they were ready to start a family. The Spartan wife would live with her parents, and the husband would live with his friends. This was to ensure that both the bride and groom had plenty of time to prepare for their future roles as mother and father. Spartan wives were expected to be obedient and subservient to their husbands, and they were also forbidden from bearing children outside of marriage. Any child born outside of wedlock was considered illegitimate and was put to death. Number 6. Food. The Spartans were known for their simple and bland diet. They mainly ate vegetables, fruit, and grains, and they avoided all kinds of spices and condiments. This was because they believed that these things could make a person weak and soft. Spartans also believed that eating should be a time for reflection and contemplation, not pleasure and indulgence. They also believed that a clean diet could help them stay focused and alert. In fact, the Spartan army was said to have been able to go without food for days at a time, thanks to their disciplined eating habits. Of course, this doesn't mean that the Spartans never indulged in tasty foods or drinks. During festivals and celebrations, they would often eat and drink to excess. But for the most part, they avoided all kinds of rich and flavorful foods. Number 7. Clothing. The Spartans were known for their practical and functional clothing, which was designed to make it easy to move around and while fighting. They wore a type of tunic called a chiton, which was made from wool and linen and reached down to their ankles. Underneath the chitonade, they wore a special belt called a perizoma, which was made from leather and was buckled in front of the body. The Spartans believed that this type of clothing was the most practical for their lifestyle, and it was also a way to set themselves apart from the other Greeks. While other Greeks wore fine linen and wool, the Spartans stuck to their simple and functional clothing made from animal skins and plants. Number 8. Women. Spartan women were a lot different than the women of other Greek cities. They were allowed to own property, which was unheard of in ancient Greece. They were also allowed to participate in athletics and even nude some. In fact, Spartan women were some of the most athletic and strong women of their time. This was because the Spartans believed that strong women produced strong babies, so they encouraged the women to participate in all kinds of physical activities. Of course, this doesn't mean that Spartan women were equal to men. They were still expected to be subservient and obedient to their husbands and fathers. But compared to the women of other Greek city-states, Spartan women were incredibly free and independent. Number 9. Death. The Spartans had some strange beliefs when it came to death. They believed that death was not the end, but merely a transition to another realm. They also believed that death could be a glorious and even heroic event. In fact, many Spartans would actually welcome death in battle as a way to achieve immortality. This belief is likely what led the Spartans to become such fierce warriors. If they believed that death was merely a transition to another realm, then they had nothing to fear when they went into battle. They were also more likely to take risks and fight to the death, because they knew that they would be rewarded with glory and honor. Number 10. Language. The Spartans spoke a dialect of ancient Greek known as Doric Greek. However, they also had their own secret language that they used to communicate with each other. This language was known as Spartan Greek, and it was full of puns and double meanings that were difficult for outsiders to understand. The Spartans used this language as a way to communicate with each other without the rest of the Greeks knowing what they were saying. This was especially important during wartime when secrecy was crucial. The Spartans also used their secret language as a way to test the loyalty of outsiders. Anyone who could not understand Spartan Greek was considered a traitor and was kicked out of the city. Number 11. The Spartans were ruled by a council of 5 men known as the Ephors. These men were elected for life, and they were responsible for making sure that the laws of Sparta were followed. The Ephors had the power to declare war, make treaties, and even appoint generals. They were also responsible for overseeing the education of Spartan youth, and they had the power to punish anyone who broke the laws of Sparta. In fact, the Ephors had so much power that they were essentially the kings of Sparta. However, they were not hereditary rulers. Instead, they were elected by the citizens of Sparta. This helped to ensure that the Ephors were always accountable to the people and that no one man or family could ever gain too much power. Number 12. The crates. The Spartans had a special type of funeral that was quite different from the funerals of other Greeks. After a Spartan soldier died in battle, his body would be taken back to the city and prepared for burial. The body would be washed and then wrapped in a special type of cloth called a perizome. Then the body would be placed in a stone coffin and buried with full military honors. The Spartans believed that this was an important way to show respect for their dead soldiers and to honor their sacrifice. In fact, the Spartans took such pride in their funerals that they would often hold them in public squares, so that everyone could see how they honored their dead. Now it's time to answer some questions. How long did the Spartan civilization last? The Spartan civilization lasted for over 1,000 years. From around 1100 BC to 146 BC, what was the most important god to the Spartans? The most important god to the Spartans was Apollo, the god of music, arts, and knowledge. Who was the biggest enemy of the Spartans? The biggest enemy of the Spartans was Athens. These two rival Greek city-states were constantly fighting each other throughout ancient history. If you enjoyed this video, check out the channel for more videos about the strangest history facts. Thanks for watching.